All right,
Amazing.
welcome people. We're going to give a few minutes for people to join us. I'm Phelan. This is Summer.
Yes, we both have interesting spelling names, so that's
We
why
do.
we had to say it out loud. So
True.
as people are kind of starting to trickle in, we're going to go ahead and we'll introduce ourselves, a little bit about who we are, what we do, and why the heck we're talking about mindful design in the first place and how you can use it. So let's get on. Phelan, why don't you start? Because you were the one who started this beautiful conversation between us.
Okay, my name is Phelan, and I am a life coach and an author, and I host a podcast. And all of my work centers around helping people be who they really want to be and on creating lives that they really want to live. And what that comes down to most is finding joy in life. So I help people find joy and live their lives the way they want. And everything I do is that. All right, Summer, go ahead.
Amazing. Okay, well, if you can't tell why I love this kid, he brings so much joy, and that's also what I try and do. So I'm also a life coach. Specifically, I love working with optimistic overachievers, like I'm sure many of you guys are. And so I'm a life and habit coach. And so we really work on developing the mindset and the essential habits to set you up for long-term success, and not success by like typical standards, but more just like what that really means to you.
Hmm.
And so how that applies to our conversation today with your like bringing mindful design into your workspace is that is the space where you are creating your best work, what lights you up. So that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation, because it's not just about creating a Pinterest worthy workspace, as fun as that is.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Living your best life, finding joy has so much to do with the space that you do it in. And so that's why Summer and I are talking about this today.
all
Cool.
right.
Should we get
So
started?
yes, so let's get started. And so to kick it off, I just want to ask Phelan a little bit about this because he brought up the idea of mindful design. And I think mindfulness is a really big buzzword right now. So Phelan, tell me a little bit about what mindfulness means in terms of design and how you
Yeah.
see it.
So to me, mindfulness has to do with awareness, and awareness has to do with actually being able to understand what about what is going on in you and around you, how that's impacting your life. So, for example, how that has to do with mindful design of a workspace, it has to do with being aware of why it is that I have this plant in my workspace, right? Or why it is that I have a lighter and a candle. And everything in the workspace, there's an awareness of specifically what purpose that thing is serving or not serving. And so being mindful means like adding or detracting from the workspace. Summer, thoughts?
Yeah, I love that you touched on the point of awareness, because for me mindfulness is really like I think about it as like an action rather than like mindfulness as like this vague noun.
Mm,
I'm just like, okay, how can I be mindful? And for me that comes down to decision making. So when I think about my workspace, it's exactly what you said, is like I made a decision to put this thing in my space, and it all comes down to, I guess, the feeling that I want to create in my space.
yeah,
If I could give one tip for you in terms of designing your workspace, it's think of one feeling that you want to create. And so for me in my space, it's I want to feel grounded.
mm,
So there's no right answer for this. Some people might be just like, I want to feel energized or I want to feel focused. Different things like that. It's whatever it is for you, that feeling. And then that's the question you ask whenever you bring something into your space. Is you're just like, does this help make me feel more grounded? Is this taking away from the grounded feeling that I want? So
totally.
that's kind of how I see mindfulness playing into it.
Yeah. And I think it's cool because the way that we see this differs a little bit, but like the way you are talking about this is so spot on in terms of like what feeling does this thing evoke in you? And I think for me, it has to do with the different feelings that I want to feel at different times. So in the
Mm.
morning, having a candle and being able to light a candle in the morning while I'm working before the sun comes up is a really good way to ground and focus. Whereas having like noise canceling headphones is a really good way for me to enjoy the music and like actually come into that excitement at later times in the day. So things can serve multiple feelings throughout different parts of the day. And I think that's really important too.
Yeah. So tell me, you mentioned a couple things that are in your space. Like, what's one thing that people might be surprised that you consider like a mindful part of your design for your space?
Hmm. So this one's actually kind of interesting, but I'm just gonna like go ahead and show you. So I have this tray of dirty dishes, and I didn't know if I was going to talk about this today or not, but honestly, having a tray to put all my dirty dishes on instead of bringing them downstairs every time I'm done eating, like actually frees me up a lot to just be like, that's over there, it's done with, and then do it in batches. So I'm a kind of person who likes to work in batches as opposed to like doing things and breaking up my routine. So that's something that's like really different. And I think most people probably don't do that. That serves me in a way that I've had to be kind of intentional about. Yeah.
I love that. And that actually brings up something that you and I were talking about before this and knowing yourself.
Mhm.
And so you had asked me earlier about like how I kind of designed my workspace. And so we kind of have different, we know that we're different in this way. And so as we're talking about this, think about how this applies to you. So Phelan just described how he likes to work in bursts. And so that's not only like in his work day of like why he has the dishes there, but also in terms of he said that he set up his workspace in stages. He didn't just do this big like grand remodel all at once. And so he knows himself. He knows that that's the way that he's going to design. He's going to design bit by bit. Whereas me, on the other hand, I like to go like all at once. I'm just like, I just want to knock this out. This is the way I'm going to do it. And I'm going to get it like, I'm going to do it the first time. And so with that, there is no right or wrong way to go about designing your workspace. You can either go all in or kind of like add things as you go. But the question that I'd ask yourself is if you don't have a workspace that you currently love, ask, am I expecting myself to do this all at once? If
Mm,
you are, then you may want to try, breaking it up in batches. Or if you're just like, no, I just want to do it bit by bit, and that's not working for you, give yourself permission to go all in. Either way, it's about knowing what works for you. And if you don't currently have that space, then it's on you to just try something else.
yeah. And I think that there's something here actually that I've talked about with clients is like there's this fear of creating your own space because it means kind of taking ownership of your bubble and creating what you actually know you want. So I'd love to let's just we didn't plan for this question, but I would love to hear your thoughts about what that means to like have the courage to create a space for you. And if you aren't good at short bursts, then doing it all at once or vice versa, and how you might like find the mindful awareness to know which one is right for you.
Totally. And as we're talking about this, I love that you guys are chiming in here of like what works for you. Myrna says bit by bit works for me. I love that. So if you guys want to pop in, everyone else who's on the call, what works for you? If you're a bit by bit kind of person, or if you're like an all at once, go for it. Let me know. So to answer your question, Phelan, I think that this comes up with the shoulds a lot,
Mm,
or at least when I don't know if you can tell based on some of the photos that I've shared of my space, I really am into the design aesthetic. And when I first kind of got into that and like really wanting to make things look perfect, I put so much pressure on myself to like view my space as like, this is me, as if like it was a static thing that I had to get right. And so I think having the courage to be just like, okay, yes, my space is going to reflect who I am, and that gets to change is really powerful. Because then, even if you are a person like me who loves to go for it all at once, you have permission to change it after. It's
yeah.
not like you just do it and then that's what you're stuck with. So I think that's something that's really important is just like give yourself permission to design it the way you want it to be,
Mm,
not the way you think it should be. And then you have the permission to change it because that was a huge pressure for me. And I know a lot of the overachievers that I coach have this on like, I need to get it right the first time. So
totally.
what do
Yeah.
you think? Answer
Yeah.
your own question.
No, I love your answer. I think that it's cool to combine them in almost this like marathon and sprinter kind of thing where you can look at your space and envision how you want it to be and then go after that and make like one big burst and then just change it if it doesn't feel right. Like I think another thing I talk about with clients a lot is how people feel like their decisions are forever when most of our decisions we can change or adjust as we move forward. So I think what you're talking about is really cool and it takes off a lot of the pressure too. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
last, yeah,
I think we should show our spaces also before we get too much farther into this. Just
totally. And
quick, like a
I think I think that'll be a good point also because the space, oh, well, also you guys chiming in, you're awesome. Uh, Paper and Polish says, I feel that pressure, big dreamer and but fearful implementer. I feel you so much. So here we go. And we'll talk about kind of how to overcome that
Yeah.
as we touched on. So I'll flash to my space first. So this is actually my workspace and bedroom because I take calls in here, but I actually work in another space when I'm just like on my own creating content and making
Hmm.
things for my clients. So this is like my current workspace, as you can see.
Beautiful.
And then Phelan, why don't you show us yours and then we'll
Yeah,
continue rolling.
mine is way less planned, but so I have a mic recording this conversation, some GarageBand notes. I have my plants, which keep me happy. I have the books that I'm reading right now, my blue light glasses, tea, keys, headphones, charger, mouse. This mat is from when I used to play Magic the Gathering. It's like a memory thing for me. And then this candle, which one of my clients inspired me to get, just helps me stay focused. And then I have all these affirmational note cards and just some like random art things that I've created.
Ooh, okay. Can we talk about affirmations and them in your workspace? Because I think that this is another thing, just like the term mindfulness, that's kind of a buzzword,
Mm,
but I think that affirmations can be really powerful if you know how to incorporate them into your space in the right way. I
yes.
have some here myself. So, how do you choose what affirmations you put in your space?
Yeah, good question. So for me, it changes as I change. Right now, there's a big one of just this question like, what is it like to feel like enough? Right? And how do you go about feeling like enough and like there is enough for me? And so I think that those are the questions that I'm pondering recently. And so that's one of the note cards that I put up there. And then another is just like, as I'm working on this big like book proposal right now, which is a ton of grinding work, putting up one that's like, don't forget to like believe in yourself and just keep going because as you keep going things will happen. And so I think that as I change, my affirmations change. Like in the other room I have some old ones that don't really resonate as much with me now, but were still really important for me at other times. So it just is kind of a constant process. And then I also always keep note cards, blank note cards, and a Sharpie so that if something comes up I can just write it down really quickly and then put it up. And that's like a really good way for me to keep creating a space and recreating it. Yeah.
I love that. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but Phelan and I are both big on this being a process. So for me, I'm the same. I keep sticky notes based on what I need in that moment. And so what to say about affirmations here is, let's say I think we've all heard an affirmation that we're just like, yeah, that sounds so nice, but it doesn't really vibe with you, like it, or
Mm,
you wish you believed it, but it doesn't really like feel true to you. I know there are a lot out there. For me, the affirmation that I wish that like really vibed with me is the I am good enough or like I am enough. For some reason, that one just doesn't hit home with me. And so I think the most powerful thing for you guys with your affirmations and what you put in your choose to put in your space is, yeah, make it something like that creates that feeling that you want. Like we talked about in the beginning, when you're bringing things into your space, think about the feeling you want to create. So choose an affirmation that creates the feeling that you want. And then for me, like the feeling that I want in my space is like feeling grounded and empowered. And so my sticky note is doing new things is badass. I'm a badass. And this last one, I'm making progress even when I can't see it. Because as I'm
totally.
sure, as you guys all know, there are so many things in life that you do not see the rewards till later. So as I'm grinding away, like working on this blog post that I'm just like, I'm not sure what this will really accomplish, I look at this and it keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I choose it because it does feel true, even more than like the I am good enough.
Yeah. That's beautifully said. I think that one thing that you just touched on is connects back to the mindfulness piece really well about, making these affirmations yours and making sure that they actually resonate with you. And also what you're talking about in terms of growing and like not seeing your own growth. I was literally just talking about with a friend this morning about these plants in front of me and how every day this jasmine plant that I have is growing and growing, and this leaf, this like branch is so much longer than it was a week ago, but I don't actually see it growing every day. And so for me to have in front of me this plant that is growing without me seeing it grow, but over the time I can like watch it get bigger, is a really cool reminder that it's hard to see your own growth sometimes too. So the things that are in your environment can actually help you have more mindfulness and awareness about your own well-being too.
Yeah, I love that. And last thing on that, so funny how we intellectually know that about other things. We're just like, yeah, like I know I don't see the plant
Mm,
growing,
right.
like, but when it comes to ourselves, we somehow forget that. And we're just like, no, I need to see the results right away or else it's
Yeah.
not happening. So
Yeah.
I love that. And also, if you guys want to pop in, why don't you guys pop in the comments one of your favorite affirmations that really rings true for you? So I just want to see because I think it's so inspiring, and we'll shout out some of them that you guys love.
Yeah.
So other things, getting back to like mindfulness and the actual design of this, we've talked a lot about what is actually in your space. So tell me what it means for being mindful about what's not in your space. Like,
Mm.
what do you not have in your work environment and why?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think that it gets really deep into the actual mindful awareness piece. Um, it's tough for me to like think about what is not present. So I have to go back and think about some old spaces. Um,
Mm,
I think that keeping in mind the pieces of what used to be like really present in my life that didn't add to it, right? So like in the past, certain addictions that I had or certain like traumas that I had made me want to put things around myself that kept me feeling supported by those things in a way that stopped me from flourishing and moving past the suffering into this like real happiness and joy. Um, and so I think that like knowing myself and being able to go really deep in terms of who I am has led me to be able to not have in my workspace things that don't add to my well-being. It's a really tough question though. I would love to hear your answer.
yeah. And so I love that you touched on like how this
Oh, can't hear you. Oh, there you are. Great.
hilarious. I'm so sorry. Um, as you can see, I actually have time limits for how much time I can spend on social media
Ah,
apps. So that just kicked in. That's
mindful
hilarious.
workspace design right there
There
in
we go.
action.
Hilarious. Okay. So I love that you touched on how this can be like more of a high-minded thing of like, this is just who I am and what I don't have, like that doesn't work for my well-being. I really approach it in terms of like the question that I always ask myself is, how can I make it as easy as possible to do what I want?
Mm,
So, in terms of that and what's in my space versus what's not. So, what's not in my space? This goes for my bedroom and my workspace. I do not keep my phone anywhere nearby. I do not keep a charger in my room. I do not keep anything like that. And this is not to say that you guys cannot do that because, like, some people, it totally works for them. But I know that I get distracted way too easily. And if I want to be focused and grounded in my workspace, my phone takes away from that. So that's like the question that I ask is just like, okay, how can I make it easier to do what I want to do? So that's one thing that's not in my space. And then in like on the flip side of like making it easy to do what I want, I think about like a lot of the things that distract me from my day. So like for me, I will look for any excuse to get up and get a drink of water, to
yeah,
put
me
on
too.
to put on chapstick, to get a snack, to put on hand cream. Like literally the excuses that I come up with to like break my focus are hilarious.
Yep.
So in my desk, in my drawer, I literally have all of the things that would normally distract me. And I have like chapstick, I keep a water bottle, as you can see right there. I have hand cream. Like I even keep a snack bar like in my desk because I know that that's making it as easy as possible for me to stay focused by eliminating those excuses.
Yeah.
So that'd be the question that you guys can ask yourself. So tell me, what's one thing that usually distracts you guys when you're trying to focus and you're trying to work?
Mm,
And go ahead, pop it in there, and you'll notice even just by calling it out, by pointing out leaves like, oh, yep, this distracts me, your brain already starts going to work on how you can solve it.
yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the things that I do sometimes when you like ask, what do I not have in my space? So this mouse, I only ever use to play video games. I never use it for anything else. And so if I'm really trying to focus, I will take it and like put it all the way downstairs on the other side of the house and make sure that I have no like access to playing video games so that I can actually focus. And so it's not perfect. And I think that like being compassionate with ourselves too, and being like, okay, we don't have to work 24 hours every day, right? Like there are these opportunities
Mm,
to, in your workspace, have fun too. I think that's a really important piece of the whole puzzle, and making sure that you're actually making the intentional, mindful decision in the moment of what is most important right now. Is it most important to have fun, or is it most important to get my work done? And then doing that.
totally. I think that's a great point. And then also, when you ask that question, you can also mix it because, like, okay, how can I make getting work done more fun?
Mm,
And so, like, I think just to the whole point of this is when your workspace is somewhere that you genuinely want to be, not saying that that all of a sudden gives you this massive amount of motivation and that's going to solve all of your work problems. But when you're in a space that you want to be in, it makes the rest so much easier and so much more
yeah.
fun. And so one of my favorite ways to make something like really fun is, I touched on this in my Instagram post yesterday, is I like to pick a signature color for my
Mm,
space. And so I don't know if you guys can see behind me. So like in my room on my bed, I have those gold pillows. I have this gold blanket. And then if you look at all of my decor, I have like a lot of like gold rimmed things. That is like my way of like bringing the fun into my workspace. I love, just like, it makes it easy for me to focus because I'm just like, okay, I'm not distracted by a bunch of competing colors. It also, for someone like me who's super indecisive and hates making a million decisions and having a lot of options, I just know, I'm like, oh, if I'm bringing something into my workspace, it better either be gold or something that matches pretty well with gold.
mm,
So that's just kind of like a fun thing for me. Um, and then last thing that I'm just realizing now that I also like to do, and I always like to incorporate kind of like a sneaky surprise into my room, like something
mm.
that's a little unexpected. Because as you guys can
Cool.
probably tell with me, is like I like to have things very organized. Like I'm pretty type A. And so I always like to have just like one thing that's like a little unexpected that you might not think like would fit with my character. And so for me, what that, it just makes me laugh. So for me, what it is, I actually don't have it with me, but on my vision board, which is like this gorgeous thing that's like as basic and cliche as you would expect for something like me, I snuck in the words full of beans. I don't know why, but I saw it in a magazine. And now when I see it in my workspace, it is just something that makes me laugh so hard. And I know that's really random, but you guys might try and think of like, what's something that you can incorporate that's like just for you. It doesn't have to match with
Yeah,
this perfect aesthetic or anything like that, but just something to make you laugh. So that would be
totally.
what would be a fun thing.
That's an awesome point. I think we should take a second to shout out these affirmations. So,
Yes.
um, Myrna said in the chat, if I quit, I fail. Failing my way to success is a good thing. So true. I love that. Great affirmation. And then when T somewhere said, favorite affirmations lately, I'm powerful and I'm worthy of my goals. Yes, worthiness is huge. And if you're seeing that every day when you go to do your work, that's going to make a huge impact. It's a small thing with a really big potential. And then
Totally.
Paper and Polished had a question. So on the flip side, how do you make yourself get up regularly? I feel like once I sit down, I never get up and take breaks. Summer, I feel like this is a question for you. I'm exceptionally good at taking breaks, but I'm also very much not a type A personality. So what do you think?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think when I always like look at something that's happening that I'm doing that I don't like if I'm just like I'm not taking breaks and I really want to, I always ask why,
Mm,
and like what am I thinking that's making that really hard?
yeah.
Because for me, when I don't want to take a break, a lot of the thoughts that come up for me are like, if I take a break, it'll disrupt my flow. It will, like, I won't be able to get back in the zone when I come back. All of these things that it's not necessarily true, but that's what you're thinking. And that's
Hmm.
really why you're not doing it. So just becoming aware of like your reasons for not doing it, of like, and just questioning, you're just like, is that really true that I won't be able to focus when I come back? Or even if it might be true, you might be just like, okay, well, me thinking that I'm for sure not going to be able to focus makes me not take the break and not even give it a chance.
Yeah.
So just view it like an experiment for the next time. So that's always the
Mm,
first question I ask, is like, ask, what are you thinking? Like, that's making it hard. But as far as like translating that into action, is for me, once I realized that I was like, oh my God, I was so panicked that I would like never be able to get in my flow again, I would just set alarms to kind of remind me to take breaks, because
mm,
sometimes it's not this deep thing. Sometimes there's no like major like mindset blocks. Sometimes you're just like, oh, I forget. So the simple thing is like, set a reminder. I'll set a timer on my phone and I'll literally label it. I'll be just like, time to, my reminder is release and reset. So I like get up, I take 3 deep breaths and I go
mm.
release
I
three
love that.
times, and then I reset with a new intention. So
Mm,
like before this call, Phelan and I even talked, and my intention for this call was to be playful. So when you're like, I need a reminder to take a break, set a timer, label it with a reminder for you to get up. So
yeah.
I hope that helps. Pop in the chat if that's something that sounds like it might be fun for you.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome. One thing that I was just thinking about while you were talking is today how basically I've been sitting in this like huge overwhelm of like work, 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 work. And today I just like made myself take the day off. And so I went walking for like an hour and a half outside. And it's funny because in the break, in the quiet, what I actually want to be doing comes out. As opposed to if I'm just forcing myself to keep working, then I'm working often on the wrong things. Whereas if I'm out and distracted and taking a break, then I can come back. This is not really about your workspace, but I can come back into my workspace and be like, oh yeah, here we are. We're doing the right thing. Um, and I think also having effective ways to take breaks from one work to do a different work. So like having a book nearby means that if I get tired of writing, then I can read. And that's like still a productive use of my time, but it's a break from the other thing. Those are my thoughts on breaks. Does anyone
I
have any other
love it.
questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we have time for one more question, because we want to make sure that we wrap up and like leave you with some really concrete takeaways.
Yeah.
But if you guys pop in some questions, we'll see if we can answer those right before we hop off. But while you guys are popping those questions in there, Phelan, tell me like one or two of your top takeaways from this conversation, so we can make sure we leave you guys with something awesome.
I think my biggest takeaway is that this process of creating your space is different for everyone. And that's kind of the point. And so while Summer and I can sit here and talk about our ways of going through how we create our spaces, how you're going to do it is going to be different. So that's my one big takeaway. And then the other part is that it's fun. Like you get to just create whatever kind of space you want. And it's all like a game. It's all a fun way to make your space yours. Yeah. How about you? And then we can answer these questions.
Yes. Also, I'm not seeing questions come in, so
Oh, okay.
you're gonna have to
Yeah,
tell me
yeah.
what the
That's great.
questions are. That's awesome. Okay, so I'd say my top takeaways from this are like really to just make intentional decisions. I think this whole thing is just that whatever is in your space is your decision,
Mm,
and watch out for like when you're telling yourself you should do something. Or like for me, there would be like designers that I admire. I'm like, I should design a space like theirs, and it didn't feel inspiring. It was more just like a chore. So like checking in with that and like how you're making your decisions. And then last one is that we've both touched on, is like, how do you want to feel? I
hmm.
know that sounds really fluffy and not like a concrete design tip, but when you use that one feeling, I would recommend choosing one, not that it can't change, but choose one overall to focus on for like what you bring into your space. That makes everything else about designing it so much easier for you. So I'd say that's like the big one for me. I really
Love
liked that we
those.
both kind of found that. All
Yeah.
right, you want to read out
Okay.
some of these questions
So
to finish?
yes. Paper and Polish asked Summer, where is your vision board?
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's tucked under my bed right now because I was
Mm.
adding more to it. You know what? You guys are going to be sneak peek on what you can see. All right. We're going. All right. So
Ooh.
we're finishing up, but here's the full of beans, which I previously had on another thing. But I'm figuring out where it's going to go. But yeah, this is my
Wow, that's
vision
awesome.
board. So I'm touched that you want that you wanted to see it. It will be up in my workspace again shortly. I had one obviously before for last year, but that's my one for this year that I'm taking my sweet time on.
Nice. It's beautiful. And then Ella King asks, tip for establishing good posture in your workspace. I have an answer for this. Should I go? Okay. So for me, the biggest thing has nothing to do with the workspace, but rather just doing yoga and becoming more aware of my body has made me way more aware of my posture. So something that I do a lot is when I'm stressed, I lift my shoulders up like this. And in my awareness and my mindfulness, I've been able to be like, oh yeah, I'm lifting my shoulders up, and then just be like, whew, right? So that's really helpful. And there are different kinds of chairs too, I know. My chair is really shitty, so. Summer?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Same point. For me, meditation and I used to have terrible posture. Meditation and yoga has helped so much because you're just like very conscious of your body for those few minutes. And once you get in the habit of doing it, then it spills over into the rest of your life. It's hilarious that you mention it because my dad literally complimented my posture yesterday, which was something that he used to shit on me for. So funny that you asked that question. Not exactly a mindful design thing, but I think that even just maybe incorporating like a minute of meditation where you just focus on your posture,
Yeah.
it'd be fun to help.
Yeah.
So
we
very
have
good question.
one more question. Do you have time?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Tips for creating a good vision board.
Very similar to, well, mindful design in the same sense of just looking for what genuinely creates the feeling you want. So I'd start off with the feeling. And so like for me this year, I like chose a mantra. And so it was seek discomfort, which is interesting because if you saw my vision board, it looks very calming and very balanced. And that is not my natural state. I am very much an hyper energized, enthusiastic person. And so for me, what is uncomfortable is that grounded balance, but I've seen so much how it benefits me. But yeah, so in terms of how that applies to like your vision board, picking the things that you want based on that feeling and making sure that you're looking in the right places. Like I started off like looking in magazines that were like strictly food magazines. When you look in food magazines, you're going to find a lot of food. Or like same thing on like if you're designing your room, if you're looking in like I don't know, if you're looking in like a TJ Maxx, I don't mean to shit on TJ Maxx, but like if you're looking in TJ Maxx, you know you're going to find certain things there. So just
pay attention
my Instagram,
to where you're shopping.
My social media limits.
It's all good.
Pay attention to where you're looking, because if you're not finding things that inspire you or create the feeling that you want, you may just not be looking in the right places, which is a big thing for me. All right.
So just to wrap up quickly, Dre says chest opening stretches are great for better posture, in case anyone was wondering.
Amazing.
She's a yoga teacher, so she'd know. And then also, we just want to give you one action item and one takeaway from this call, which is to go into your space and either find one thing to get rid of or one thing to add. And then do that, take a picture of your space with the new thing circled or describing what thing you got rid of, and then tag Summer and me on your story. That's it.
Yeah.
And we'll share your story and get hyped about it.
Yeah, we want to see, because we think that this can be such a fun process. So go ahead, do that with us, and we will talk to you guys soon. Cannot wait to see how you guys design your workspace. So much love. See you later, friends.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.